Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to explain how to do the Enderman particle teleportation effect, but apart from that this tutorial will be a bit longer than usual because I will go in depth with some details. I will show you a few shortcuts, tips and tricks, and I will also teach you the basic 3D modeling to model the Enderman particles. But if you learn those skills you can model other things as well if you're going to need that in the future. So if you watch this tutorial then it's going to be worth it for you. Now with that being said, let's begin. Hey everyone, let's learn how to create the Enderman teleporting effect. You can use this on Endermen, on characters, on other mobs, and you can use this on whatever you want, and it's going to work on any version of Blender. So for this one, I'm going to need a character, and I'm also going to need to create some objects and particle systems. So without any long intros, let's begin. Also, if you need to ask any questions, if you need any help, if you want to share your work with the community and so on, then be sure to join my Discord. The link will be in the description. Now I'm going to enable my collection to end this scene, but before I do that, I'm going to delete the default cube, obviously. So I'm going to select the default cube, X delete. I'm going to delete the point light as well. And to demonstrate this effect, I'm going to be using the ice cube rig. The link will be in the description. It's a very good rig, and I will probably be using this in the future for some of my animations as well. And if you're interested, the link will be in the description. I'm also going to turn on the screencast keys so you can see what I'm clicking. And let's say I want my character to teleport from point A to point B. So I'm going to go to pose mode quickly, and I'm also going to set my starting keyframe to 0. And this is, you don't have to follow along. I'm just doing this to demonstrate how the teleporting effect will work, how the particles will work. So I'm going to select the root bone, set a keyframe over here for location. Then I'm going to go forward 1 frame. So I'm going to click on my right arrow and then move my character somewhere over here. G, X, snap it, and then move it somewhere over here. And then press an I, and then location. Now I'm going to go to playback, king, set this to location. In rotation so that I don't have to press I again, and then I don't have to choose the keyframe again. So if I press on I now, or if I move the character, the keyframes are going to be set automatically. Now, I moved Steve from here to here, and this is basically a teleporting effect because if I have a camera right here, and if I play, Steve disappeared in 1 frame, and in the animation it's going to appear as if he teleported. So right here, we want some teleporting particles. So imagine if this is an Enderman or if this is any other character you want to be teleported, we want to add a particle system somewhere over here. So I'm going to go to the object mode because we don't need to animate this anymore. And I'm going to click on Shift A with my cursor in the world origin right here. If you don't have the cursor in the world origin somewhere over here, you can click on Shift C, apologies. And that's going to snap the cursor back into the world origin. Or you can also, I believe, Shift S and then cursor to world origin, and it's going to do the same thing. Shift S, cursor to world origin. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm going to click on Shift A, and then we're going to create an object which is going to be a particle emitter, which is going to emit the particles. So we need the icosphere because that works really well. Now I'm going to move the particle icosphere somewhere over here. So I'm going to click on G, Z, and then move this up around the body of the character. And then I'm going to scale it down as well. I'm going to click on F. For some of you, it might be the numpad period to zoom in on an object and rotate around the object. So I'm going to rotate around the object, scale it up, scale it down, just do whatever you want. And I think this size should be enough for now. Now what we're going to do is create a particle system. But first, before I do that, I'm going to delete the keyframe for this. I'm going to select the keyframe on the timeline, press on X and delete because we don't really need to keyframe this icosphere. I'm going to turn off the auto keyframing as well, just in case. Now, I'm going to go inside the particle settings, which is this particle section under the wrench icon. Click on this and then click on new. Now to stay organized, I want to name my particle settings and name it something like Enderman teleport, something like this. And now we need to mess around with a few settings. So if I press play on my timeline, you can see what happens. My character disappears, but we have these random particles which we need to adjust because obviously that doesn't look really good. I mean, if you're going for like a quick rain effect, then I guess that can work. But for the teleportation effect, we need to tweak a few settings. So firstly, scroll down and then go under the field weights. If it's collapsed, you can expand this by clicking this text. And then you can expand the field weights menu and then turn the gravity all the way down. You can left click and drag, or you can also click this and then type 0. Now if I play back, you can see my particles are moving like this. But we need them to be faster, so we need to adjust a few more settings. Firstly, what I like to do is reduce the number because I think that's a bit too much. So under the emission tab, which is the first tab, you can click on number and set this to something like 500. We can cut this in half because we don't need too many particles. We can also turn up the lifetime randomness And if you watch these start and end frames, you can see the particles start at frame 1 and then they end on frame 200, which we don't really want. So if we're gonna add this sudden pop, like sudden particle explosion or almost like an explosion effect, then we need the frame start and frame end to be the same or almost the same. So if I have my frame start at 1, I can also click on end frame, set this to 1. And now if I play back, you can see what's gonna happen. Boom, we have the particles coming like right away. But obviously this does look good, but we're getting there. So if I play back, the particles are coming out like this. And then if we want to make this faster and if we want to make this random, here are a few things we can do. So expand this velocity menu, scroll down, and then let's turn up the randomize to something like 1. So that the particles are going to be moving more randomly. We can leave these settings on default. We can also leave the normal at default. Now we can also enable rotation to make this more dynamic. We can also enable dynamic, but I'm not sure what this does. I've enabled this before, but I don't know if it makes too much difference, but we can have this enabled. Now scroll down under the forces. So first expand the physics and then expand the forces menu. By the way, I'm going to collapse these because this looks very disorganized. We don't need these. We don't need this. So under physics, let's pay attention to the physics. We can scroll down and then we can mess around with the damp. So damp, it's basically gonna move the particles a bit closer. But if you turn this up way too much, it's not gonna look good. So if we drag this up to something like 0.9, 1.19, you can see what happens. The particles are moving closer to each other, like this. Now we can also go to the emission once again, and then set the lifetime to something like 25. So that particles are gonna start disappearing around 25th frame, like this. So you see we're getting there pretty close. So Steve disappears, and then boom, the particles appear right here. And now another thing we want to do is change the particle from halo to object, because these are halos and they're not going to be visible once you render the animation. Now, first we can change this to cube to demonstrate how it's going to look. We can apply a material to the cube, but then if we want to go more advanced, we can create the Enderman specific particles. So first I'm going to create a cube. So I'm going to click on Shift A, Mesh, Cube. I'm sorry, I guess we shouldn't have deleted the default cube, so because it's still going to be useful. I'm going to move this cube somewhere over here. Maybe I'm going to scale this down. We can also, just in case, click on Control A and apply the scale, just in case. Now I'm going to select the particle emitter, which is the sphere. And also one thing I forgot to do is go under the render settings. Let's find the render settings. Yeah, somewhere here. Click on the render settings and then disable show emitter. So the emitter, this sphere is not going to be visible in the final animation and we're only going to see the particles. Another thing I want to do is particles end around frame 25. So I'm going to use frame 30 and set the end frame to frame 30 as well, so that we can preview this over and over again. And now, while I'm in the rendered, under the render settings, I can change the render as from halo to object. And then I can set the object to this cube. So I'm going to select this dropper and then select the cube, or you can also select the cube from this menu as well. So you can see we have these small cube particles coming out like this, while Steve disappears and moves from point A to point B. And then we can mess around with the different settings. So we can scale this up if we want to. And then a cool thing we can do is, while I'm in the material view, I'm going to change the material for this cube. I'm going to move this somewhere over here. Let's make sure that this cube is not visible at the camera while you're animating. I'm going to go to the material, create a new. Let's name this Enderman particle material so that we're organized. And then I'm going to change this to under the surface. I'm going to change the surface from principled BSDF to emission. Now I'm going to change the color to something purplish, kind of like what Endermen have. Maybe set the strength to 2. Maybe make this more purple, like this. And if we play it back, we can see we have these Enderman particles coming out. But if you want to go more specific, more Minecraft specific, like if you can leave these stylized particles, these are going to work really well in your final animation. If you're making a teleporting animation with an Enderman, with character, with mob, whatever you want, this is going to work really well. But if you want to go extra, here's what we can do. You can leave this like this. Make sure to save your file constantly, Control S. And then I'm going to go to Google and then search for Enderman particles. And then you can download any of these images you want. What I liked is this picture from Planet Minecraft. And if you like any of these pictures, basically we need these pictures to model them as a reference. So for example, I want to download this. I'm going to click on save as, and then save the file in the folder which your animations are. So basically you want to stay organized and you want to locate this image faster. So after you save your image, I'm going to go back to the Blender. And then here's what we can do. We can hide these. So we can hide this collection. We can also click on H to hide these particles temporarily. Now we can click on Shift A, other image, click on reference, and then be sure to load your reference. So I have the Enderman particle right here organized. If I click on this, I have this image right here. But since I was in the perspective view, it spawned in a weird way. But what I can do is click on Alt R, and then this is going to clear the rotation. Now, if I delete this, if I go to top view by clicking numpad 7 or from here, if I click on, again, Shift A, image reference, and then import this, you can see it imported in a flat way. So make sure you're in the view which you want, for example, front view or top view. But if you're not in the same view, we can just click on Alt R, and then this is going to reset the position. Now I want this image to be sitting flat like this. Now here's what we can do. We can press on numpad 7, and then we're going to do a little bit of the modeling. If you don't want to do the modeling, if you don't want to follow along, then I will leave a link for these particles in the description. It's going to be free to download. But if you want to access the whole particle systems, I'm going to upload that on the Patreon. So if you don't want to model these are going to be free in the description, the Enderman particles. Now, after I select my reference, I'm going to go click on this image icon, which is the data. And then under the opacity, I'm going to check this opacity and then turn this down slightly so that it's not bright and in my face. And I can slightly turn it down so that I can see this better. And then I can see the objects that I'm going to be modeling better. So here's what we can do. While we're in the top view, while we have this in the center of our world origin, I can click on Shift A, Mesh, and then let's create a plane. Now, we need to scale down this plane. So make sure you scale down the objects in the edit mode. So if I want to move around by object, I can move this around in the object mode. But if I want to change the scale, I want to do that in the edit mode. That's because I want to keep the scale to 1. So if I go to item, you can see the dimensions of the plane is 1. But if I turn this up, you can see that the dimensions change to 2 and then 3 and so on. But if I turn this up and turn this down in the edit mode, the dimensions are going to be the same. But if you accidentally turn this up to something like 1 or 3, you can click on Control A and apply scale, and it's going to go back to 1. But some people forget to apply scale, including me. So it's a good habit to scale around the objects in the edit mode. Now, this is not critical for these particles specifically, but if you're going to be modeling other things, then make sure you scale around the objects up and down in the edit mode. So I'm going to go to edit mode, click on tab, or you can use this menu to access the edit mode as well. Object mode, edit mode. Scale this down. So let's scale this down somewhere over this size. I'm going to go back to the object mode by pressing tab, pressing G, move this somewhere over here. And then again, if you want to scale this up, I want to match this image size. I want to match the size of this particle outline. So I want to press on tab again to change the scale and then scale this up. But if you want to see what's going on in the background, we can go to the wireframe view and then toggle the X-ray so that we see what's going on in the background. Now scale this up somewhere over here. It doesn't have to be too accurate. Go back to object mode and then G, move this up somewhere over here. And go back to perspective, make sure everything is correct. Now here's what we can do. We can go back to the edit mode. We can right click and then we can click on subdivide. For some of you, it might be W and subdivide. For me, it's right click, subdivide, and then expand the subdivide menu. And then let's turn up the number of cuts until we match the reference image. Basically, we want the cuts to be kind of similar to this, and it doesn't have to be too accurate. Let's turn up the subdivisions. Let's see what we have. Maybe the 10 is a bit too much. Yes, I think somewhere 5 or 6 should be enough. Let's leave it at 6. And now if I tab or click on anything else, this menu is going to disappear. But we already did what we need to do. We already subdivided this, and here's what we can do. So right now we're in the vertices selection mode. So vertices are these small points, and this indicates that we're in the vertex selection mode. If I click on this, we're going to go inside the edge selection mode. So we're going to select the edges. And then if we go to face selection mode, we're going to be selecting the faces. And in this case, we're going to need to go into the face selection mode. Shortcut for this is 1 for vertices, 2 for edge selection and 3 for face selection mode. Now, here's what we need to do. We need to go to face selection mode and delete all the gaps. So delete all of these, which we're not going to be using. So I'm going to select these. You can select them manually, shift left click, or you can also enable the C and then select everything with the left click. You can click on these centers and then select these faces right here. So I'm quickly going to select these. These aren't too much, so we can select them quickly. And after we selected them, we can click on X and then delete the faces. Now, if I go to the solid view, you can see I have this Enderman particle, which looks pretty cool. And if we apply the material, it's going to look very, very good. And now we can repeat the same procedure for the different objects, but we don't have to redo this. We don't have to create a plane again. But if you want to, you can do that. But I'm going to go to the solid view again. I'm going to click on Shift D, duplicate this, move this somewhere over here. Let's match this somewhere over here. Place it on top. Go back to the wireframe view. Toggle X-ray. And now after I match this reference to another particle emitter, Enderman particle, apologies, I can press on tab, go back to the edit mode, and then delete all the faces which we're not going to use. So we have these faces, which we're not going to be using. So I can delete these. X, delete faces. Now if we go back to the edit mode, you can see we have these, another particle object. If I go back to solid view, we have 2 particle objects. Now I can repeat the same thing. Press on Shift D, duplicate this, place it somewhere over here to match this. Tab, go inside the edit mode. Let's go inside the right frame view, and let's delete these. Delete this. And if I go back to the solid view, we can see we have these, but we don't have this small square. So it's pretty easy to replicate. So I can press on tab, go back to the edit mode, select this face while we're in the edit mode, press on Shift D, duplicate this face, and then let's place it here. And if I press on tab and go back to the object mode, you can see we have this new face created. So that's pretty easy to replicate. Now let's do the same somewhere over here. Press on Shift D, duplicate this, match this. Doesn't have to be too accurate once again. Maybe like this. Tab to go back to edit mode and wireframe view. I know this might be a bit tedious, and maybe there are easier methods to create this. If there are, let me know in the comments. Help each other out. But this is the method I use, and it works really well for me, and it worked really well in the past. So I'm gonna delete the faces. We have another particle. For this small square, we can either create a new plane, mesh plane, scale this down, match the new object mode, or another trick I want to show you is I'm going to delete this. I'm going to select one of the objects in the solid view mode, press on tab, select one of the faces, click on Shift D, and then copy this and then paste it over here. But the problem is if I go back to the object mode and select this, you can see that this object belongs to this object, which we don't want. So I'm going to press on tab, select this face, press on P, and separate by selection. And this is going to be a different object if I select this. But the problem is if I rotate it or scale it, the origin point is still going to be here. So again, to fix this, I can click on right click, set origin to geometry, and now the origin, this orange point, orange dot, which is called origin, is going to be in the center, and it's going to be rotated and scaled pretty easily on the proper origin. And now another thing you can do is you can leave this like this. For example, you can see we're missing a face here, but again, it doesn't have to be too accurate. This actually looks like an Enderman particle. But if you want to fix this, so if you have faces around this, and if you want to fill this in, you don't have to Shift D and copy this. Here's what we can do. We can go to the vertices selection mode once again, and then select these vertices, which we want to fill basically. So let's select this, Shift and right click to select this vertice, Shift and right click, and Shift and right click. So we selected the square, and I can press on F, and this is going to be filled in. So F is a shortcut to fill the faces, fill the gap. And now we have these beautiful Enderman particles created. And to organize them, here's what we're going to do. First, I don't think we need the reference, so I'm going to delete this, X and delete. And then I'm going to stylize these a little bit so you don't have to extrude them, but I'm going to extrude them anyway. So I'm going to click on tab. I'm going to press on A to select all the vertices. Let's go to face selection mode to be more accurate. I'm going to press on E. And if you press on E, it's going to extrude the particles up. It's going to give them some thickness. Now I'm going to do the same for these particles as well. Tab A to select all the faces, E to extrude it up slightly. Do the same here as well, but you don't have to do that. You can leave this flat and they're going to look good in flat as well. Especially if you have a weaker PC, you can skip the extruding part. You don't have to do that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. E to extrude it up. Same thing over here. E, extrude like this. So we have these extruded particles, and we don't have to create a new material for this because we create a new material for the cube right here. So I'm going to select one of these. I'm going to select this big particle. I'm going to go back to the material view. I'm going to go to here and then select this icon, not new, but select this material icon. And then let's search for Enderman particle. That's why organizing is good, because we named this particle. And if I select this, you can see that this particle, this emissive particle, is applied to this object. Now, if I want to apply these particles to other objects, I can do that manually, but who wants to do that? So here's what I can do. I can select all the particles together. So select this, shift left click, and shift left click. And then we're going to select this particle, the last. So I'm going to shift and left click, and then make sure it has the brighter outline than other objects. And then I'm going to press on Control L, and then we can do link materials. And then as you can see, the link the materials and all of our particles have the same materials. And the last thing we need to do is organize them in a same collection. So I'm going to move these together somewhere over here. And then I'm going to select them, bulk select these. You can click on B, bulk select them, or you can select them manually with shift, left click. And then I'm going to press on M, new collection, and let's name these Enderman particles again. Enderman particles, press on OK or press on Enter. And once we have these organized in a different collection, here's what we can do. I can press on Alt H to unhide everything. So I hid these particles, as you can see. And then I can press on collection 2 to unhide the second collection where we had Steve. And then another thing we want to do is always when you create a particle object like this cube we created, we need to hide this. We need to move it somewhere over here because we don't want them to be visible inside our camera. Now I'm going to select this particle emitter. Again, go to the render section here. And then change the instance object from cube to these particles. So here's what we need to do. First, we need to click this X and disable this. And then we need to go to render as, and it changes from object to collection. So if we change it to collection, we're going to be able to select an instance collection here. So if I left click this, I can search for my particles. I can scroll down here, but who wants to do that? I can click on particles, type this Enderman particles. And now the Enderman particles are going to be applied here. So if I play back, you can see that I have these Enderman particles coming out like this. But obviously they are too small, so I can scale them up without any issues. So again, under the render section, we have the scale option, and you can scale these up to however you want. And then as you can see, we have this beautiful particle settings created. If I render this animation, this icosphere is not going to be visible, and we're only going to see these particles. And as you can see, we have Steve right here. Steve teleported. And then we have these particles coming out. And you can customize these with the settings that I just showed you. You don't have to customize too many settings. And that's pretty easy to do. Now, to demonstrate what this does, I'm quickly going to render this out in Eevee. So I'm going to go to the render properties, set this to Eevee, enable the ambient occlusion, bloom, so that our particles are going to be glowing like this with the emission. I'm also going to enable screen space reflections, motion blur. I'm quickly going to place my camera over here. Another trick, if you want to place your camera in front of your character, here's what we can do. We can go to, obviously we can click on numpad 7, go here, shift F, adjust this, but who wants to do that? I can press on numpad 1 to go inside the front view. And now I can press on Control Alt, number pad 0. And then now my camera is going to be aligned to view. And now I can adjust this if I want to. And let's play back our animation. And we have this beautiful particle, portal, random, Steve, whatever animation. I don't know what to call this. But we have these animated particles created. I'm quickly going to render this out. So I'm going to go to the output, set this to FFmpeg video. We don't need PNG because the TV is going to render fast. It doesn't crash a lot when I'm rendering in Eevee. I have pretty good experiences with Eevee. I'm going to go to encoding and change this to MPEG-4. I'm going to organize this in an output. So I'm going to save this in my folder, which I want it to be saved. And now I can press on Control F12. But before I do that, I'm going to check whatever samples I have. So I'm going to go to the render settings again. I don't need 64 samples to test this out. I can do something like 30 samples. And I can press on Control F12. and then render the animation. And then I'm going to come back. Now I'm going to turn off the motion blur temporarily because Steve is not really visible when he's teleporting. And I forgot to get rid of this as well. So we have this tiny particle over here. And as you can see, I told you to get rid of these particles because we don't want them to be visible in the final animation. So I'm going to get rid of this as well and place it somewhere over here. Now I'm going to re-render this. And AV is going to go through the animation really fast. I have no lighting, that looks pretty bad, but even with no lighting, you can see the particles look pretty bright, pretty cool. They have really good shapes. And you can sell this as a Minecraft animation. It looks pretty good. And now if I play my animation, you can see it looks pretty good. We have Steve disappearing. And then the particles come out. And you can add these particles once again to characters, to mobs, to Endermen, to whatever you want. It works really well. You can create different shapes. You can mess around with different settings. But if you use the settings I showed you in the video as well, you're going to be fine. And you can create cool effects in your animations. Now, one thing I forgot to mention while recording is that you don't have to do it, but while you're finishing setting up the particles, you need to bake them. So you can go under the cache and then bake them. But these particles are super tiny, they're super fast, so I don't think you have to bake them. But still, there's an option for that if you want to bake them. I usually didn't bake them when I used them in the past because these are super fast. They're calculated really fast and they're not like huge particles. So you can either go to cache, bake them, or you can leave this on default. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video. As you can see, it's nothing crazy. It's pretty easy to create these particles. You can model them, you can remesh them, reshape them. But I'm going to leave these in the description and you can use these for your animations as well. If you want to use the full particles, this effect is going to be available on Patreon. If you want to learn more about the Patreon, the link will be in the description. You can check it out. Also, be sure to join my Discord as well if you want to ask questions, share work, and get to know the community. We're past 200 members, and I hope we can grow the community even more. Also, if you want to see my latest animation, which is Abandoned Village, then you can check out this video right here, and I will see you there. Thank you for watching.